test this for a while. I got a sleeping bag from Sportsman's Guide. It claims it's rated from 30 degrees down to -10. I'm going to give this a worst case scenario. I'm just wearing a t-shirt, some lounge pants, and I've got a key to get back inside. I'm testing this at home just in case it's a complete failure. I'd rather find out here at home instead of up in the mountains somewhere. This has a pretty decent hood on it. It is a mummy sack and it weighs about 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds. So it's about the same weight as 2 of my normal blankets that I bring with me camping anyway. So if it works out well, and I'm doing this just with a hammock, no underquilt, nothing else, just the bag and the hammock. So if it works out well, I might be changing up my sleep system some. We have 15 degrees even right now. This could be a complete failure and we might be calling it quits here pretty soon, but we're gonna find out. You know, best way to find out is at home instead of up in the mountains. Just wearing cotton socks, little ankle socks. It is freaking cold out. This is nuts. There we go. Sleeping bags in the hammock are always a little bit of a challenge just to get everything situated. There we go. Oops. Oh. It's a double zipper. Did not realize that at first. The zipper has a backup button system too, so in case the zipper fails, you can snap it together and get it closed that way. I would say that's less airtight though. There we go. All zipped up. Well, might pull my hat over my face, but I'm actually, of course, since I was moving around a lot, actually not too bad. Of course, I need to slide up in this thing a bit. Let's go. There we go. There. All right. Lights out. Well, our update is it's actually not too bad. It's got a really nice neck baffle here. When I've got that pulled up, it traps the heat in very well. The only downside is wherever my body is touching the bottom, back, luckily it's my lower back too, and back of the legs and my heels are feeling like I'm laying on an ice pad. Definitely need an underquilt still. Between this and an underquilt, I'd say you're set up for pretty cold temperatures. I'm actually feeling pretty warm in this. Of course, every time I go to reach out to start the camera, it's icy out there. Somewhat cloud cover sky, even though I can see a few stars out. It's still down in the 15. I'd definitely call it easily survivable at 15 degrees because, like I say, it just feels like I'm laying on an ice pack. The rest of my body is nice and warm. We'll see what a couple hours will do for my feet. Like I say, the the heels are pressed down against the bag pretty hard, so they're getting a little icy. But I would say a position change here and there would probably solve that. So far my toes are nice and warm. I mean, they're chilly, not frozen yet. I kind of get the feeling with my backside being as cold as it is that I might be calling this after a couple hours, but we'll see. I am about 30 minutes in right now and feeling pretty good. So I'm going to try to fall asleep and see if I wake up shivering. But so far it's not too bad. It's got a little drawstring too for around the hood, so you can tighten that up and cinch the opening down quite a bit. But we're gonna try to get some sleep. Oops, this kind of shifted on me. Oh well, probably can't see much anyway. Yeah, all right, good night. The night went better than expected. I really figured that with as cold as my backside was, I'd be waking up all the time. I fell asleep and woke up with my first shiver at about 3 in the morning. Before then, it was soon after I laid in there, my feet were starting to get pretty cold, so I had my kid bring out my little slippers here. These are normally what I bring when I'm overnight camping. They work really well to keep your feet warm, but when you're already starting out with cold feet, it takes a long time to warm them up. They remained cold in those for quite a while. I did fall asleep though soon after and woke up at 3 in the morning with the first little shiver. And it was enough to wake me up from my sleep though. Had I given it the proper setup with an over tarp and an under quilt, that would have been all the difference in the world. It dropped down to about 9 degrees last night, and right about then is when I woke up with the first shiver. I called it quits right away, knowing that it doesn't get better after that. Usually when you start your first shiver, it's going to commence from there on. Instead of giving myself a miserable night, I decided to pull out and head to bed. And that's the whole reason why I tested this at home instead of up in the mountains, because you can't really call it quits. But again, in the mountains I would have had the underquilt and over tarp, and it would have been way better. But just having this little extra layer here, I wrapped that over my face, and that helped block a lot of the wind. And it was a pretty light wind, but it was still enough to block that cold from hitting my face. The neck baffle worked really well on that sleeping bag, and for as light as it is, it actually kept pretty warm. The only cold part was just my backside. Wherever it was touching the hammock here was where it was compressed and cold. The sleeping bag itself worked really well. I think pros and cons of it: you don't have freedom of movement like you do with just a top quilt. I typically use a poncho liner, otherwise known as whoopee, just as a cover, and I typically bring 2 of them, which is the same weight as that sleeping bag, or real close to it. I think I will be converting over to the sleeping bag, even though it's a little bulkier, but not by much. I think it was a 8-ounce difference between the two is well worth packing, just in comfort. So if I ever find myself in a night like this where it drops down into the teens or single digits, I'll still be comfortable. The under quilt alone makes a huge difference. It's night and day. So it really feels like you're warmed from the bottom, just because it does trap that air pocket. Even with the wind whipping through, it helps quite a bit. The underquilt I have doesn't quite cover all the way up on the sides between that and the sleeping bag, because it was just that center zone where I'm compressing it is where I'm cold. So between the two, I'm going to be able to easily handle single digit temps just with those 2 alone, not even a top cover. And of course you need that for weather anyway. But one thing that I did wake up to often was ice cracking. There's a few containers around here that are trapping ice, and as the temperatures were dropping, it was popping. And so I kept on waking up to this popping sound of the ice. That did wake me up a couple times throughout, but that was the only thing that actually kept me awake more than the cold. It really did feel like I was just laying on an ice pack for my lower back. And so it was kind of nice because when I crawled into bed finally, it was nice and numbed up and felt pretty good. Anyways, yeah, it was a pretty eventful night. Less than eventful. It was a pretty decent night for a trial, and I'm glad I was able to finally get some temperatures low enough to give it a good run. It's snowing right now, and it's warmed up to about 22 degrees, so it's not too bad. Let's see what this thermometer says. Oh, 20 degrees. The feet getting cold was an issue though. So I've got probably poor circulation, so starting with these would have been the key. And when these wear out, I'm getting another set. These are great little sleepwear because they're loose enough fitting that they don't constrict your blood flow. They do have a little shock cord that you can tighten up the cuff and lock the warmth in there a little bit. Not that I ever do though. But they keep my feet pretty warm. Even with the pressure on the back compressing that insulation, it still helps quite a bit. Yeah, it was a good test. I'd say that sleeping bag rated down to -10 is definitely not correct unless you've got some sort of protection from the wind and the ground. It's designed to be laying on the ground with it, but you've got to have some sort of sleeping pad or something to break that thermal conductivity between the two. No way you could go down to -10 degrees, even with nice warm clothing that you're typically wearing in those temperatures. I really highly doubt that you'd still be comfortable unless you've got some sort of pine boughs or something down to break that thermal connection there. But yeah, it was a decent sleeping bag though, and I think it's going to be part of the pack from now on. Thanks for watching, and I think my next video is going to be the house.